It's not impossible. I used to bullseye womp rats in my T-16 back home. They're not much bigger than 2 meters.
Hello and welcome back to Unlimited Limited, the show where we all come together and try to get better at drafting and sealed in Star Wars Unlimited. So, very exciting news that I think I've already talked about and that you probably all already know. So, starting with Legends of the Force, some of the Planetary Qualifiers are going to be draft and sealed going forward. That's very exciting for me, who likes Constructed a lot, don't get me wrong, it's great, and I think the game's in a really good place too. But my real bread and butter is sort of draft and sealed. What is my hair doing? Oh, what planet is this from? They don't do it like this on Naboo. Oh no. There's a lot of resources out there for preparing for PQs and other tournaments, not just for Star Wars Unlimited, but for lots of games are applicable, you know. There's decades of literature on preparing for Magic the Gathering tournaments, and a lot of those are transferable to Star Wars Unlimited. Things like, you know, make sure you're drinking water and eating and, you know, make sure you get a good night's sleep beforehand. Everything that is the same as you preparing for, like, an exam, right? And a lot of those are transferable for any sort of, like, activity that you do over a long period of time that takes mental focus for the entire time. And don't get me wrong, the draft and sealed PQs are going to be exactly like that. You know, make sure you drink water. You don't need me to tell you that. But there's also some other things that I think you ought to be looking out for that there's maybe not as much literature on. Before we get started, I just wanted to do a massive shout out. Axel Hutt has been working on a comic, Angel's Power, for quite some time. And you may remember him from the trivia show a few months ago that I did with several of the Star Wars Unlimited artists. So Axel is, of course, you probably don't need me to tell you who he is. He's probably, if not the most, one of the most popular artists in the community among the players. My favorite, I actually didn't put on this list of his. I really like Shoot Down a lot. I think that's a great piece. Anyway, he's been working on this comic for a while. I just wanted to give it a shout out on Kickstarter. He actually just announced a few minutes ago that whenever it reaches 50% funding, there's going to be a new reward tier where you get custom one-of-a-kind hand-drawn playmats, and I think that is so cool. So, you know, I just wanted to shout out there. I'm not getting paid or anything for this, genuinely. Just go support one of the game's best artists. Link is going to be in the video description, so go check that out. And thanks for coming on the show, Axel. I appreciate that. So into the discussion. So what is the format? You probably already know this, so I'll breeze through this pretty quickly, but you know, PQs are pretty big to do, you know, one draft of everybody, right? That'd be a 60 or 80 person pod, and you know, that's not going to quite work. So before the draft at all, there's going to be sealed. So everybody goes in and they're going to get 6 packs, and it's just going to be sealed. Y'all probably know how to play that. If not, there's lots of good guides on my channel and on other channels about how to do sealed. And I think that the sealed, how you're building your decks for the sealed portion or anything will actually pretty much be the same as pre-release. Obviously, you know more about the format, so use the knowledge that you've gained throughout any drafts or other sealed events that you've done since pre-release. But in general, I think you should be thinking about kind of the same things, so I won't rehash any of my old pre-release preparation videos because I think this is going to be very similar to that. Notably, there are no pre-release leaders, so for Legends of the Force, no Maul and no Qui-Gon. But actually there are sometimes pre-release leaders, right? Because you can open a showcase. But that won't happen very often. So much like constructed Planetary Qualifiers, there's going to be a top 8 cut. So people with the best, you know, the 8 highest scores are going to have their own event like immediately after the PQ, and that event is going to be a draft. So an 8-person pod, which is what the draft environment typically is designed for. So it's quite possible, you know, if things don't quite go your way, that you won't actually be doing any drafting at the PQ. It's just going to be a sealed thing, and then you'll go home, unless you're in the top 8, in which case you'll stick around for a top 8 draft. So let's break this down a little bit more. So in the sealed part, like I said, pre-release deck building guides are applicable here, so I won't rehash those. There are lots of good ones. Of course, whenever you go back and watch a pre-release guide, you will have more knowledge of the format than the person at the time that they made that video. You know, so you could go back and watch my pre-release guide, and some of that will still be good and right, but some of that will be just like very wrong. And I'll do a video. I like to do a video every set of like the things I got the most wrong. And you know, so don't take any guide you see as religious, especially whenever you now have more experience in that format than them whenever they made it. So just keep that in mind. But in general, pre-release guides are pretty good here because I think you're going to try to build your deck for the most part in the same style that you would a pre-release deck. So as you also probably know, sealed does have more variance than other formats. Sometimes you just open crazy, sometimes you just open terribly, and that's going to like determine your day. Now, of course, usually it's going to be somewhere in the middle, and deck building and piloting is what will take you to the end. But sometimes you will just get hosed, and that's just part of the sealed process. And in sealed, that happens more often than in other formats because, of course, in constructed, sometimes you just get hosed. You draw none of your 2-drops, right? And that can happen, but that can also happen in sealed. But also there's that extra variance of, did I open a good deck, right? Like, was there a good deck in the pool of 6 packs that I opened? One thing that is kind of nice about sealed that I like a lot, and it is, I think, skill testing, is your entire pool is your sideboard. So, instead of a 10-card sideboard that you'd be used to for constructed, you have access to a lot more cards. Now, of course, some of those cards, let's be out of aspect, are very obviously unplayable in your deck, but you still will have some cards in your sideboard that may have some creative uses into different matchups. So keep an eye out for those and really do consider every card that is not obviously not fitting in your deck. One lesson that we learned from pre-release is don't neglect space unless you have a very good plan. So what I mean by that is if you kind of just fully neglect space and your opponent develops in space at all, like in a unit, they have like an Exegol Patroller, the 3/1 Overwhelm for 2 on turn 1, and then they start playing into ground. They might just run away with that game if you have no way of dealing with that, right? Especially if they're playing Snoke, who is a good leader. So when I say don't neglect space unless you have a very good plan, what I mean is, do you have a way to deal with your opponent's space? Because, if you've fully neglected space, but you have a way to deal with your opponent's space, then that means you're playing into the ground harder than your opponent will be because they're playing a bit into space. But if you play leaders like, say, Mother Talzin, who can -1/-1 on Exegol Patroller, or you happen to get a lot of decent removal, some Shatter Points, a couple of Mace Windows maybe that can, be a good, strong ground unit and also deal 4 damage up into space. There are ways that you can interact with space without yourself playing in space, but most of the time you're going to want to have a bit of a balance. Of course, this format is more ground heavy, but yeah, be careful whenever fully neglecting space for sure. That's sort of the sealed thing that we've learned with this set. But in general, I think, it's very much just going to feel like a pre-release, of course, without those 2 pre-release leaders, unless you open a showcase, which would be very cool. So for the draft part, the first thing I want to mention is actually the second point I've included here, which is player quality is going to be a little bit unlike constructed PQs. So in the top 8 of constructed PQs, those are players that have, scored 4-2 or 5-1 or 6-0, sometimes 4-2, depending on how many people. They're going to be players who have really proven themselves throughout the day, who brought a deck and they're very good at that deck, and they are probably just in general very high quality players if they're able to top 8 PQs and make it to that. So, whenever you're playing against them in the top 8, if you are fortunate enough to make the top 8 yourself, then you can bet that all of your opponents are going to be quite strong. In limited PQs, that's going to generally be true, but it's going to be true less so and less often than in constructed PQs. Because as I said in the sealed portions, sometimes people are just going to open crazy pools. They get 3 Shatter Points, a couple of Cheroots, maybe they get 2 of the Cadimundis and 2 of the Mace Windows. They just build this disgusting blue, red, white force package. And they're not actually that amazing at the game, but they just get completely carried by their pool. That will happen, and likewise there will be incredibly good players who open, pretty poorly and don't quite make it. Now, I just want to be clear about something. I'm not trying to say that this all is determined by a coin flip or RNG or anything like that. It's not at all. The players that make top 8 are on average going to be pretty good players. But what I am saying is that in constructed, basically all the time, every top 8 player is going to be quite good, whereas in limited, it's going to be most of the time whenever we're talking about sealed. So in the top 8, people are going to be drafting a little bit differently than they do at your standard Friday Night Magic or Friday Night Star Wars drafts, or whenever you're able to have drafts. Because tell me how many times you've heard this before. Someone beside you opens up their pack and they're like, oh no, say it's pack 2 or pack 3, and they're like, oh no, this card would be so good in my deck, but there's just a really expensive hyperspace card in here, and I really want to take it for a Twin Suns deck or a constructed deck, or just to have like, oh, what do I do? Oh no, where, and I'm guilty of that as well. Sometimes I want to build the best possible deck. Sometimes I just want to take, the $25 card and be like, oh, sweet, cool. I, paid for my draft, and, my deck is a little bit worse now, but whatever. That will probably not happen at all at these top 8 tables, because if I have the choice in front of me of taking, let's say, Shatterpoint, very good card, and let's say I'm in, I don't know, Kenobi blue, so blue, white, and green. And I take, I open Shatterpoint, and that's very clearly the best card in the pack, but there's also a Darth Vader, and Darth Vader, of course, while good, is not splashable for 8. So on an average, like Friday night draft, I probably, I'm only human. I would probably take the Vader and pass the Shatterpoint. But in a top 8 PQ situation, I would absolutely be taking the Shatterpoint and passing the Vader. And I think that that's going to be a pretty common experience from a lot of people, that they see more expensive cards go later. And if you're trying to maximize for winning, which is probably what you're trying to do if you're in top 8 of a PQ, then you sometimes will just have to pass the expensive cards, and you can more often count on them getting passed to you as well. Now, you still shouldn't count on getting past a Vader or an Anakin or something like that. Just know that it will happen more often in these events than in your standard events. So I realize the title of this slide is Forcing versus Staying Open, and I haven't really talked about that at all. So I think I've mentioned this before in guides, so I won't belabor this too much, but some leaders are better than other leaders. That's very obvious, I would much rather be playing a Snoke deck than, say, an Ahsoka deck most of the time. And that's not to say that Ahsoka is unplayable. It's just that I think that, if you were to run the Snoke Ahsoka draft simulation a million times, Snoke would definitely come out more than 500,000 of those times. I think it's just going to be a better leader in most cases. So, if you have both of those leaders as options for you to draft around, right, and to pack one, I don't think it's unreasonable to be favoring Snoke in those earlier picks. I know in real drafts there's 3 leaders, but just take the simplified example. I don't think it's unreasonable to be drafting hoping that you can play Snoke, whereas if you were truly fully staying open, you would just be taking the best card and then, deciding your lane 5-6 packs down the line, right? But I do think it's reasonable to take those Snoke cards early if that's what you want to do, which, in my opinion, that's what you should do if you're trying to maximize your win rate here. But I think that also you shouldn't be stubborn about it. If pick 8, you're finding that green villainy cards really are just not there, then it's completely reasonable and encouraged that you're like, okay, I was wrong. Hopefully some of these cards are salvageable and I can play Ahsoka still, right? Finding that balance is going to be very important because, of course, if you lock in and force too early, you might end up getting completely just cut off and draft a very poor deck for the leader that you've drafted. Whereas if you stay open too late, then you may also have sort of sacrificed some very strong cards for the lane that was pretty obviously open. So it's about that middle section where you can stay. Now, I have to mention the cosmic upside, where if you force and you're correct, you will probably have the best deck, right? If right away I have my 3 leaders in front of me and I'm like, I'm playing Snoke, and then I take every great Snoke cards, like pack 1, and I just, every single possible one, I'm all in on that, and nobody around me at all is playing green villainy, I'm probably going to have a pretty insane deck. But you can't generally count on that happening, and the downside is pretty substantial. If, a guy 2 seats to the right of you and someone to the right of them are both in green villainy, then you're probably going to be in some trouble. I haven't done any actual quantitative analysis on this, but from my own experience, I've noticed that I usually try to have an idea for my lane about pick 5 or 6. Usually that's enough information, not always, but I've noticed that if you're able to sort of have your lines solidified by then you can usually build a pretty solid deck without having the risk of being in the wrong lane. And that's also why, and I've mentioned this before, so I'm kind of being redundant, That's also why I like to, for the first few picks, if possible, and if the card quality isn't a massive difference, I like to take just neutral cards because they help me stay open. Because even if I was picking wrong for the first few picks, and then I noticed that a different lane is open and I move to there, it's a lot easier for me to bring those neutral cards over to that new deck than it is if the heroism villainy split was happening. One other small note is people should be more interested in the leaders of their neighbors. This is purely anecdotal. I've noticed that at drafts that I've been going to, and I'm guilty of this as well, I kind of just quickly glance to like either side of me and I'm like, yeah, okay. But I think at the PQ top 8, you will likely see, and really should see, that people are maybe not taking notes because people should be having their leaders face up around you, but like really regularly kind of looking around and reminding yourself about who has what before making picks. I think that's going to be very, very important. And you can also take little gambles on which of the 3 leaders your opponent is trying to build around. You know, if the person to the left of you has, let's say, Kenobi, Grand Inquisitor, and let's say they got unlucky and got a Darth Revan. Well, they're not building on Darth Revan, probably. So Kenobi, Grand Inquisitor. Kenobi's the better leader. They're probably going to be leaning towards that. So if you're kind of on the fence between, let's say, Kenobi and Mother Talzin, right? You know, here's a villainy leader. Maybe that leans you a little bit more into the Mother Talzin picks because you're like, okay, they're probably going to be trying to build for Kenobi. Of course, be ready to abandon that if you've noticed signals. But of course, the best thing you can do is practice. You can watch all the guides you want, but the best way for you to get better is to practice. And there's kind of 3 tiers, in my opinion, of practice. The highest tier is getting a group of 7 other people that are very competitive minded and serious about getting better at draft and sitting down and grinding out drafts with them. That's the best way you're going to get better because everybody's going to be on the same page about, you know, high competition. Everybody's going to be on the same page about, okay, you know, we're drafting seriously. We're going to try to make good decks. You know, we're not going to try to make this funny thing work necessarily. And don't get me wrong, there's a place for that. I love drafting funny decks. But when you're trying to get better for a PQ setting, the best thing you can do is try to emulate a PQ. And people are less likely to be doing like funny decks at PQs. The second best thing you can do to practice, in my opinion, is just go to your local game store and draft there. That's going to give you great practice. You're actually getting into that setting and drafting, and just, you know, not everybody's going to be really trying to get better competitively there. Some people are just there for the fun draft, but you'll get like 95% of the practice that you would in a fully competitive table. You know, you'll still be building your good deck. Sure, every now and then something will go really late that you would not expect to at a PQ, but you know, you probably still take that card and then you just sort of realize, okay, but you know, in a PQ that maybe wouldn't have done so well, and would my deck still be good if I didn't have that card, you know? That's not to say that great cards can't go late at PQs. You know, if you've identified the open lane and everything works out for you, that can absolutely happen, but it'll happen more often for sure at your, you know, Friday Night Magic draft. Which I wish more stores would do more often because I would be there all the time. The third best way for you to practice is actually, I guess this is the announcement, I've been working on a draft simulator for a while. Now, of course, the practice that you'll get from this is nothing compared to the practice that you would get from going and actually, you know, buying your draft packs and practicing at a game store, or going, again, better yet, going and getting a box from a game store and going and drafting that with, you know, 7 other competitive people. But, you know, in a pinch, whenever, you know, maybe you're wanting to practice for those events, or maybe you just, there's no game store nearby that runs those sort of things. Or maybe, you know, you're just on your lunch break at work and you wanna do a little bit of practice, again, for either PQs or for your standard Friday Night Magic or Star Wars drafts. The draft is against bots, so again, that is why that's the primary reason why it's not going to be good as regular practice. It's against bots, and bots are not people. And as much as I try to program them to draft well, and again, I'm working on it. Currently, they're okay. They're hopefully soon going to be quite good. But they will never be people. For that, you got to go to your game store or, again, get some people together for that. But again, in a pinch, I think it's decent. Let's talk about funding really quickly for that. So I'm planning on starting a Patreon. It's probably up by the time this video is. The Patreon is going to primarily just be for the channel. You know, if you feel like you want to support that, of course, it'll always be free. And I guess I could say, oh, the Patreon will give you like a more direct line, you know, if you want to, I don't know, chat about like a particular draft pick or something like that. But honestly, I reply to the comments in the YouTube video anyway, so you don't feel like you need to do that. For the draft simulator, I think I'll keep behind Patreon. Always, it's completely optional and always will be. I don't think there's really any tiers beyond like the draft simulator. And honestly, if you're like really desperate for practice and can't afford it, just DM me and I'll give you access to it. Lastly, I know I shilled two things in this video, my Patreon and Axel's Kickstarter. If you can only support one of those things, please support Axel's Kickstarter. He worked way harder on that than I did on this, and I would really like to see it succeed. But hey, if you have two pockets that have holes with money spilling out of them, then, maybe one of them can go to him and one of them can go to me. Anyway, I digress. Let's get into the draft simulator. Okay, so this is the layout of the draft simulator. You can see the leaders that your table mates have opened along the bottom. Of course, you're passing to the right first. So we have Snoke, Ahsoka, and Third Sister. And then we have Talzin and two Third Sisters to the right of them, or to the left of them, sorry. And then we're passing to someone with two Kit Fistos and a Snoke, and then they're passing to someone with a Morgan Elspeth, Talzin, and Kenobi, it looks like. So we're going to for sure get past a villainy leader, but not necessarily a heroism leader. So even though Rey is really not good at all, I think it is important that we have a heroism leader. So I am going to take Rey here, even though I think the best leader here is probably Grand Inquisitor. I'm going to take Rey, although these are both pretty good. All right, so they took Snoke, which is unfortunate because that's the one that I wanted, but sometimes that's just what happens. Looks like we are for sure going to be getting a villainy leader, so I'm okay taking Ahsoka if I value Ahsoka higher than Third Sister. I think I will take Ahsoka. Having a blue leader is nice over having another red leader, and we're pretty much guaranteed to get a villainy leader. And hey, it might be Third Sister if they decide to take Talzin. And they did decide to take Talzin, which I think is the right pick. So that leaves us with Third Sister. So our leaders are going to be Rey, Ahsoka, and Third Sister. Okay, and here is our first pack. So of these three, the first thing I like to do is think, which of these would I like to build around? Now, that's not to say which of these am I going to build around. Those are two very different statements. The latter is a statement of I'm going to force this leader, which I think is pretty much never going to be right unless you get some real stinkers. But it's okay to have a preference that might help guide your early picks. But ideally, if you can stay open, then I think that's a good thing to do. So looking through our rares, Marchion Ro, we would only be able to play that with Third Sister, and it's off color from her. So it's a decent card for sure if you get there on the raid build around. But I think that we're going to be looking elsewhere. These two are just not even contenders. Maz Kanata is quite good. Whirlwind of Power is better. I think this is currently the pick. Jedi Consular is good in either of these decks, but of course we do run the risk of, neither of these are green leaders. So that is a slight limit. Of course you can have a green base, but that should still be a consideration. Thralls of the Coven is good. For the record, I'm still on Whirlwind of Power. Thralls of the Coven is decent. Charging Filiac is all right. This is fine. Protect the Pod is good, but I don't think I would take it over Whirlwind of Power with this specific leader spread. Although I do like Protect the Pod. A very good line that I think people overlook is leader flip, protect the pod. Most leaders are going to have health higher than their attack and have very high health in general. So this is going to, if I flip Talzin and you flip Talzin and I play Protect the Pod on your Talzin, I just did 7, I killed your Talzin, right? It kills the mirror leader every time, and it kills non-mirror leaders often, right? So definitely very good and very slept on, I think, for that reason alone, but I think I'm still on Whirlwind of Power. Just the cheaper is just nice. Not on Lothwolf, not on Acolyte, not on Lothcat, and not Hyperspace, so I think you just take Whirlwind of Power. Okay, now that does, of course, give us a slight lean towards Ahsoka, just because it's blue, but not in any way that, restricts us from anything else. Okay, Ezra Bridger is very strong. Force tag, of course, well statted. There are a decent amount of creatures in the set, so definitely currently the pick. We're going to work down. Nihil Marauder is decent, so is Fallen Jedi, but I don't think they're better than Ezra, even though Ezra does have that double aspect. Supremacy Tie is good. Crushing Blow is very good. Now, that is a contender over Ezra. I'm still leaning Ezra right now, but I think that it's worth the discussion. We'll come back to it. Jedi Consular, of course, quite good, but same reason as before. I think I would be on Ezra over it. It is very good, though. Don't get me wrong. Pounce is funny. Bolstered Endurance is surprisingly decent in draft. And these three are good, but not great. So I think it's between Ezra and Crushing Blow, and I'm going to take Ezra. And there you go. We got a Crushing Blow if we want it. Okay, so currently with this sort of spread, I am leaning Ahsoka. I think Ahsoka is a better leader than Rey. The flip on 7 and then the ability being like kind of useless is pretty unfortunate. The Sentinel doesn't come up a ton, but when it does, you're happy you have it. All right, Baylan Skull is quite strong. Now, of course, that would push us towards Third Sister and make us unable to play Ezra, which might happen. We could still potentially... Oh, we wouldn't be able to play Whirlwind of Power either because we would have to be playing Third Sister Yellow, so probably not Baylan Skull. Of course, we could still end up here, but it's less likely, I'd say. Kelleran Beck is pretty unlikely unless we're doing Ahsoka Green, which could happen. But I think that even though this card is very strong, it's probably not the pick right now. Although I guess if I have to pick one right now, it's probably Kelleran Beck over Saesee Tiin. Although I do like Saesee Tiin. This is not playable. This is a good card, but we're kind of somewhere else right now. Medical Frigate is one that I'm going to talk about in my the cards I was most wrong about. This card is underperformed, and I won't belabor it now because we'll get into it, but in that video. There's a Crushing Blow. There's a pretty solid 2-drop. This is, of course, better when you can do the old DACA thing, but it's still good. I do like Will of the Force. And Exegol Patroller is good, but not for our deck. So for me right now, it's between Kelleran Beck, Crushing Blow, Night Sister Warrior, Saesee Tiin. Let's see, so we have 2 3-drops. Well, a 3-drop creature and a 3-drop, a 3-drop unit and a 3-drop event. Getting 2s is important, but there are more commons than there are uncommons, so maybe I take an uncommon here. Between Kelleran and Saesee Tiin, I do really like Kelleran Beck. It will close games oftentimes, and by the time you're playing it, top 7 cards is basically your whole deck. So maybe I'll take this. Of course, that does have the downside of it's like, okay, well, you'd probably be in blue-green then, whereas Crushing Blow is the safe pick, or Night Sister Warrior, but I'm going to take a bit of a risk now. And I should have taken the red one. Rats, that's okay. Looking at the pack now, it still looks like there isn't one color that's like, especially taken, so that's good. So we're probably not going to do Mace Windu, even though I do like it quite a lot. Same with Marin. Plo Koon could happen. We're really trying to solidify our we're really trying to solidify our colors right now. But honestly, just sticking with like a solid blue unit might be good. Although I do also like Minok. Minok has nice synergy with Ezra as well. If you turn 1 Minok, turn 2 Ezra, turn 3 you attack with Ezra, get the Force, probably kill something, make your Minok a 3/4. Like, that's pretty nice. And I'm kind of talking myself into it. We do need 2 drops. We already have a 7-drop, so maybe Grappling Guardian is a little less important right now. I'm going to take Minok. I talked myself into it. And now that we are in blue-green tentatively, we can look at cards like Jedi Consular. Heirloom Lightsaber is quite good, though. Like, I'm kind of tempted on that. Between these two for me, Jedi Consular's a little trickier to get up in draft. Of course, it's a better card. It's playable and constructed and very good. But I think I really like Heirloom Lightsaber. There is, of course, the downside of getting, like, Shatter Pointed, but I think it's worth it. Okay, well. Do we take a second one in a pack like this? I'm not seeing much green, which is definitely possible since... who's passing to us? Actually, guy right to our right doesn't have any green. It's probably not taking green, and, maybe. I'm still going to take another Heirloom Lightsaber. I just think it's a good play. In this pack, I don't love It's Worse, but we are a little removal light right now. We have Whirlwind of Power, which is good. I say this, and people call me delusional, and I might be delusional, but I think... I should move my camera, shouldn't I? I think It's Worse is a playable one of in every deck. I think you can have one copy of this in every deck. So let's grab my copy. This is a very late Torrenta tech. That's very good to see. Protect the Pod and Maz Wield. Don't have any 2-cost force units, but we should pick some up. Do I take removal or the efficient unit? We're a little bit low on units, but if we're playing Ahsoka, flipping on 6 and dealing 6 to something is decent, but it's not. There's a lot of like 5 costs with 7s in this set, right? Doesn't Kenobi have 7? Kenobi has 6. Never mind. I'm thinking of Talzin. Yeah. Maybe I take the unit, and because this is an uncommon also, so it's, when in doubt, take the uncommon is something I say when I'm drafting Magic. I haven't fully realized if that's like something that can be applied to Star Wars as well, but let's find out now. This is low stakes. Crushing Blow is a great wheel. Wow, Night Sister Warrior, we definitely need something like that. These cards are all not for us at all. This card is like really bad. There's a Jedi Consular, happy to take that, and a Cure Wounds. Okay, pack 2, so we're going to the right this time. So we're being passed to by someone who is certainly in blue or green, so that is a little bit of a risk for us, but hopefully they've chosen one of their dark side leaders. Okay, Shatterpoint is the immediate standout here. I don't hate Owen Lars, and I quite like Secret of Sage, but honestly, it's just gotta be Shatterpoint. This card's ridiculous. This is a weaker pack for us for sure. I think cards like this are a trap. Now this card can be real if you get there. I think, unfortunately, I have 0 right now, vehicles and droids, so not going to get there at the moment. My only space unit is not a vehicle or a droid, it's a Minoc. This might be kind of a filler pack. Yeah, I'm leaning towards Tauntaun. It's fine. It's okay. Nothing else is really for us here. Here we have some stuff for us. So Lorsa Antica is pretty good. When defeated, you may give an experience token to a unique unit. So our best target for that right now is Ezra. I guess it would be fine with Maz too, but everything else, all of our other unique units like Kelleran, that's never going to happen here. So that is an okay line, but honestly, I think I'm just taking the removal. Removal is king as always. And there is another Ezra, so that is quite nice. I guess they're probably not in Kenobi, or they would have taken the Gunji here. My bots are not geniuses, but they're not that stupid. So I think I would probably, take another Ezra here. That's incredible. Holy smokes. Okay, so this person must not be in. Wow. Okay. Yep. No, we found our lane. I mean, looking at the seats here, it does make sense that we would see something this late. But yeah, we're doing okay here. We're doing okay here. Very nice. Yep. And okay, so here's a card that I think people underrate. There's actually, I'm gonna say it. I think Jedi Temple Guards is underrated. I don't think it's exceptional, but I think people look at the stat line and the cost and think, But really, like, again, I mentioned this in my set review, but people are still sleeping on this. It's almost like not everybody watches all my videos, which is, but ambush on a force unit, you just get the force, pretty much. And 2-4, sure, is not going to be enough to kill a unit of equal cost, but it'll kill a smaller unit and stick around. The Restore 2 is annoying enough that your opponent will probably have to spend an action cleaning it up. So usually, like what this says is 4 cost, get the force, kill a small unit, gain some life, make your opponent waste an action. Like, okay, pretty good, I would say. That being said, Dagoyan Master is a ridiculous card. Obviously, if you can get it ambushed out with, like, not Niemann Strike, Xian Flurry, I think, it's, like, ridiculous. But we're not going to be doing that. It's still quite good on its own. We do need more 2-drop. Definitely need more 2-drops, so Secret of Sage is perfect here. This pack has nothing for us. So this is actually a perfect time to hate draft. So I don't usually condone hate drafting, depending on the context. For casual drafts, it's not cool because you're making other people's decks worse, and that's mean. In competitive drafts, you absolutely should be hate drafting, but people tend to hate draft more often than they should. Because 99% of the time, you're making your deck worse to make somebody else's deck worse. And yeah, you're probably making their deck, like the delta, right? You're probably subtracting more quality from their deck than yours. But you're going to be in 100% of your games, and that person's only going to be in, at most, 33% of your games, and sometimes 0% of your games. So, sure, you're screwing them over a little bit, but you're screwing yourself over, arguably more. But in a pack where there is nothing for you, hate drafting becomes a very valid strategy at, competitive play like PQs. So, some people are just tempted to be like, this pack sucks, I'll just take whatever and go. But what you should be doing is looking at who's ready. So who am I passing to right now? Passing to this person. I don't have a ton of signals from them. But looking at their leaders right now, I would say that they're probably, all of these are like okay leaders. Kit Fisto's probably a little bit the best. So if I could take like a Jedi from them, that would be nice. So Youngling Padawan would go great in a Kit Fisto deck. So I think that would be what I would take here. Now, of course, there's a chance that they're just in Inquisitor green, in which case Knights of Ren would be a happy one for them to take. But I think that they're on Kit Fisto just because that's the best out of those three. I'm not going to be right every time, but I'll be right some of the time, and I'll take it. So just thinking like that is handy. Once again, this pack kind of nothing for us. We don't really have any vehicles or droids. We can't do anything with this, so I put them on Kit Fisto. Let's keep it going. Let's take their Mysterious Hermit is playable. It's not good. Now, Quinlan Voss is definitely good in Kit Fisto. Do I take a Jocasta Nu, though? It's probably... That is kind of nice with the two heirloom lightsabers we have. So while I would love to rip the Quinlan Voss from this player, I don't even know if they're playing it. If they're in like Grand Inquisitor green, they're not playing Quinlan Voss. Of course, if they're in either of these, they are. But I'll just take Jocasta Nu. It makes my deck better. Now again, Talzin's Assassin's a ridiculous card. Just gonna remove that from the table because there's nothing else there for us. And good. The Purgil King. I think this card is underrated. Now wait, I'm not saying it's good. It's not. You probably shouldn't be playing this. But it's not like bad. If you are able to play this card and like survive a turn, you're probably going to win that game. Restore 4 is pretty impossible to beat. And then if you have like a Protect the Pod, you just get to deal 12 to something and you got to draw some cards off of it. At least you get to draw one card off it because it counts itself. So it immediately replaces itself. If you get to untap, it maybe draws you more cards. If you get to untap, you kind of win the game. Don't sleep on it. Don't sleep on it. You can sleep on Savage Repress, though. This card is ridiculous and not in a good way. You know what? In a very good way. In a funny way. I like to funny max my decks sometimes. Curious Flock is kind of, it's the scaffolding that holds a lot of decks together. Outer Rim Mystic is very playable, especially with these lightsabers. It's quite good. I don't like following the path. It doesn't draw you the cards. You kind of go down in cards to make your next draws better. It's not great. So this pack is definitely weak for us. I'm between Curious Flock, Outer Rim Mystic, and the Purgil King. And honestly, I feel like funny maxing today. So we're going to grab the Purgil King. Daguian Master's incredible. Terrentatek's incredible. Eternal Warrior is quite good. It's definitely between those three. This is a very strong pack. Oh, man. What are our force hits with Daguian Master? You can hit a Daguian Master. It can hit Keller and Beck would be quite good. It can hit Consular. That doesn't really matter at that point in the game as much. It can hit Ezra's decent. I guess it can hit Secretive Sage. It can hit Jocasta Nu. Ooh, man, they're really making me pick here. I know whatever I pick, there's going to be people on the other side complaining. It's probably definitely between these two. Itinerant Warrior is great, but maybe we get the wheel. Again, double aspect cards are more likely to wheel. Between these two, as much as I love Terrentatek, such a good card, it does synergize with Ezra. I have had such good results with Daguian Master. Is that really what I'm going to do? Oh, man. I'm really in the tank about this one. I do already have a Terrentatek. I also already have a Daguian Master. I'm going to take the... I know I say when in doubt, take the uncommon. I'm going to take the Terrentatek, and I might be upset about myself about that. Now, Watto's an interesting card, because this is a card that I very much overrated in my set review. It's not bad. It's not bad at all. But I think I called it, like, one of the best cards in the set, up there with, like, Qui-Gon. And it's not. It's not one of the best cards in the set. But it is still very good, and I'm happy to take it here. Of course, the best card in the pack probably is Talzin's Assassin, but that's not for us. Night Sister Warrior is quite good too, but I'm happy to take a Watto. There's your more removal. I don't think I need to justify myself there. Lor Santika is a decent 2-drop. Jedi Consular is a decent 2-drop. I already have a Jedi Consular. Of course, having more ups the consistency, but I think Lors Antique is good, and I have enough unique units that I think this is solid. There's another Whirlwind of Power. Wow, we are kitted out on those. We're in the right lane for sure. Night Sister Warrior, I'm happy to take there. This is also quite a good pack for us. So what's going to determine my pick here is actually entirely curve. So it's between Secretive Sage, Protect the Pod, and Keller and Beck. Looking at my top end, I have a Keller and Beck. I guess its worst counts, kinda. The Purrgil King definitely counts. I could definitely use another high-end card. In terms of removal, of course, I have Crushing Blow, and I have like 4 copies of Whirlwind of Power, so Protect the Pod goes down a tiny bit in value. And Keller and Beck, and Secretive Sage. How many 2s do I have? Minoc, Night Sister Warrior, I've got Jedi Consular. I can't play those 2s. Secretive Sage. Another Night Sister Warrior, Lors Antique. That's 6 2s. I kind of wouldn't mind another 2, but I think I'll get one. So I'm going to grab a Keller and Beck here, and maybe I'll get punished for that. Indeed, Exhibit A. This is not really anything. The only real playable card here maybe is Jedi Guardian. Itinerant Warrior is a great wheel. I'll grab that. Ooh, I would really like a 2-drop. I'll take Talzin's Assassin out of the table, though. That's a 1-drop. That's a Porg. Okay, so I got a little bit punished there. I got a little bit greedy. With grabbing the Keller and Beck there instead of the 2-drop. But maybe it's right anyway. Let's look at the deck and see how we did. All right, this is the deck that we put together. I think it's pretty solid. Wouldn't mind a couple of extra 2s. We got pretty good on the removal. We got 5 copies of Whirlwind of Power. Almost enough that I'm like, yeah, I could cut a Crushing Blow. And maybe that's right. Maybe I'm supposed to cut one of these to put in that Ewok to be another like early drop. But I'm not very fond of that that Ewok. So I think this is okay. Do I think this would win? Do I think this would 3-0 in a PQ top 8? Probably not. 3 Ezras is definitely pretty nice, especially if you do get that Minoc. I would have taken more Minocs if I saw more, but I think correct me if I'm wrong. You have the video, but I think I just got one. Synergy with Terentitech as well. Do I have any other creatures? Synergy with Tauntaun. Synergy with the Purrgil King, I guess. Jocasta synergizes decent with the Heirloom Lightsabers. I have Maz for my Secretive Sage or Night Sister Warrior or even Jedi Consular. That's actually kind of nice because it attacks the 3-4, gets you the Force, and then next turn can do the action. I've got solid top end here with the double Keller and Beck, and if it really goes late, the Purrgil King will win me some games. I'm looking now at the Purrgil King's text about the drawing cards thing. The only cards I have in my deck that can do that, really, I guess, are the Jedi Guardian, the 2 Keller and Becks, and then Watto if my opponent gives him experience counters, which they usually will. Watto will usually be a 2/7. So that's the deck. Let me know if you think that is a cool website, and if you want any other features, let me know as well. I'm more than happy to listen to feedback on that, especially if you're giving me money for it, but no pressure for that anyway. That is the video for today. I'm very excited also for the new set, which is being spoiled now. Very, very cool cards coming up in that, and I can't wait to talk about them. I can't wait to talk about my experience with the PQ, the limited PQs coming up, and mostly, I can't wait to do the what I was most wrong about video. I love that video. Always so fun to reflect and laugh at myself a little bit. So that's all for today. Thank you so much for stopping by. Axel's Kickstarter in the description. Please go donate to that. It's going to be fantastic. And as always, may the Force be with you.
So what I told you was true, from a certain point of view.
A certain point of view?